This meeting of the State of Rhode Island Board of Elections will come to order. It is Tuesday, October 4th, 2:00 p.m. Madam Secretary, will you read the roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Maderas.
Here.
Vice Chairman Pierce.
Here.
Member Bettenker. Member DeSimone.
Present.
Member Johnson.
Present.
Member Scholes.
Present.
Member West.
Present.
Executive Director Robert Reposa.
Present.
Legal Counsel Ray Apache.
Present.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. First item on today's agenda, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Scholl, seconded by the Vice Chair. I am abstaining from the vote. I wasn't present at the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Let the record reflect that Ms. Bettenker has joined us. Item number 2, the board may discuss and vote to adopt a protocol for the process of testing and sign-off of the express vote voting machine prior to elections. Mr. Reposa, would you like to start us off?
Well, good afternoon, members of the board. At the September 7th meeting of the board voted 6-0 to direct the Board of Elections staff, the staff of the Secretary of State, and the staff of Election System and Software to develop a protocol for the testing of the express vote equipment, which was received by the state during July and deployed statewide in August for the beginning of early voting and also for the September primary. This protocol was to be developed prior to the commencement of testing for the next Title 17 election. The representatives from the three entities had 3 extensive meetings and exchanged numerous emails and phone calls to prepare the draft protocol, which is before you at this time. On behalf of the Board of Elections staff, we would like to thank the staff of the Secretary of State's office and Election System and Software for their participation and ultimately in the final product as presented. With your approval, the protocol will be implemented beginning this Thursday, October 6th, as we begin testing the equipment which will be used for the statewide general election on Tuesday, November 8th. I have asked Miguel Nunez, our Deputy Director, to summarize the prepared protocol for you.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa. Mr. Nunez, we'll hear from you.
Thank you, Bob, members of the board. As Bob mentioned, this has been a collaborative effort between our staff in the Office of the Secretary of State. I particularly like to recognize the work of the Elections Division of the Secretary of State, whose staff worked long hours over the weekend, proofing express vote, on-screen ballots in preparation for our upcoming LNA testing on Thursday. We have valued their input into creating the express vote portion of the protocol, creating a testing process that is both thorough and can be completed within the small window of time available between the primary and the general election. We continue to maintain a good relationship with their office and will continue to work together to improve this protocol as needed in the future. So I want to walk you through a summary of the protocol, which you should have a copy of. First, the protocol outlines to identify the different types of ballots that voters will interact with during the election throughout the electoral process. You have paper ballots. These are proofed by the Secretary of State and transmitted to the print vendor for delivery to the Board of Elections. That would include early voting, polling place ballots, and mail ballots. And then you have electronic ballots. These are configured by the vendor, ES&S, Election Systems and Software, or Democracy Live, and proofed by the Secretary of State and loaded by the vendor onto hardware or onto the online portal. And this would include the express vote on-screen ballots or the military and overseas or accessible PDF ballots. So the logic and accuracy protocol requires that prior to LNI testing, the Secretary of State will certify to the Board of Elections that each ballot type has been checked for accuracy prior to being delivered to the Board of Elections or imported onto the express vote units or onto the online portal. Paper ballots will be packaged by the Board of Elections staff for delivery to early voting locations and to the polls for November 8th. Ballots will then be loaded also onto the express vote hardware by ES&S and made available to military and overseas accessible voters via the portal. Express vote proofing. ES&S has provided the Secretary of State with virtual screens of the express vote ballots, as you can see there. They're able to do this within their offices to review the screens and identify any potential errors that could be on those screens and notify the Board of Elections and election systems and software in order to make any appropriate corrections. On Saturday, October 1st, the Secretary of State began proofing the Spanish and English express vote on-screen ballots, and that process is expected to be completed tonight. Testing the equipment. Equipment is conducted during publicly noticed sessions beginning on October 6th. Prior to testing, it's important to remember that a printed report is generated from each DS200 and DS850 unit, confirming 0 vote totals are on each device. A report is also generated from the board's election management system, or EMS, to confirm the system contains 0 vote totals. $522 express vote units will be tested for early voting in the November 8th polling locations. Each test is comprised of a 25-point checklist to check hardware and software functionality. 27-point checklist. We just revised it from the previous. Staff will be using an alternating test ballot from the same precinct DS200 test deck as a guide to marking the express vote. So if the test deck of 11 or 16 ballots for the DS200, if there are 11 ballots in that test deck for the DS200, one of those ballots will be removed, brought over to the for the express vote device for that same precinct, and that will be used as the guide in order to mark the express vote, as I'll cover through the rest of these screens here. Now, staff will use an alternating test ballot from the same precinct DS200 test deck as a guide. So the alternating is so that the same first ballot is not used in all test decks. They'll alternate between the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and down the line. So it's random and it's not consistent to get a better thorough test of each unit. The checklists are present at each express vote unit and will be initialed by each tester to confirm it has been completed accurately. Now, during the testing of each express vote unit, the staff will verify the contest and candidate name for each selection. At the final summary screen, the staff member will verify the selections have been made properly and print the express vote card. The staff member will reinsert the card into the express vote to verify on the summary screen that the selections have been made accurately. This process will be repeated by a Spanish-speaking staff member for the Spanish language ballot and bilingual communities. A different staff member will retrieve that express vote card from the unit, but first will verify that the test card has been marked accurately. So they will actually look at the physical paper card and verify that it has been marked according to what the test ballot indicates. The card will then be returned to the test deck for the DS200 that is assigned to that same precinct and will be inserted into the DS200 to verify that it is accurately tabulated by that unit. A total of 675 express vote cards will be marked as part of this testing procedure. For the DS200, is any questions on the express vote portion of this? If anyone does, or wait to the end, it's your
Marcella, you
pleasure.
have a question?
Yeah, just a clarification. So you keep saying staff, is it just Board of Elections staff
Board of
that is
Elections.
doing the equipment, the equipment setting that you were just talking about? Is that just Board of Election staff that is doing the testing?
Us in
In this
conjunction
portion.
with the vendor, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, you have a question
I
too,
do.
Lou?
So with regard to the express vote, is this comparable to what's being done in some of the other states that are using express vote?
Yes, so we reviewed the state of Maryland, which operates 5,500 express vote units, and they have a similar but slightly less extensive testing than this proposes.
And is it used anywhere else besides Maryland?
It is used in many jurisdictions.
Okay.
We do have that number.
So I understand what our role is and what the Secretary of State's role is, but is the role of ES&S the same here as it is in those other states? Are they doing the same, do they have the same involvement in testing as they do in some of those other states?
Yes, they do. They
Okay.
do have a collaboration with the municipality or the county to do the testing. for the
I
state.
basically want to make sure they're giving us the same service they're giving the other states, basically. That's really my question, Miguel.
Yeah, I believe that ES&S has provided extensive service in assisting us with testing, yes. And they are providing personnel to assist us as well.
Thank you.
For the DS200, 592 DS200 units will be tested for early voting in the November 8th polling locations. Each test is comprised of a 27-point checklist to check hardware and software functionality. 11 pre-marked test ballots will be inserted into each DS200. That includes the one express vote card. Will be inserted into each DS200 for English communities, and 17 ballots, including 2 express vote cards, into each DS200 for bilingual communities. And this is a sample. We haven't completed the updating of the November checklist for the DS200 yet, but this is the sample from the September primary. Upon insertion of all the test ballots into the DS200, the staff member will generate the results from that DS200 and compare them to the results guide for that precinct to ensure accuracy. If there is a discrepancy, staff will notify a supervisor to determine the cause, which typically is human error. For example, if one of those over 700, almost 700 express vote cards, one of them was marked incorrectly or not according to the guide, then that will generate a false error, and it will be determined that it has to be run again. And then the ballots will be cast again through the DS200 after it is reset. The results are then uploaded into the election management system for overall tabulation, and the unit is reset to 0, and a report is generated for verification. And another staff member will go along and sign off that the machine has been reset to 0, and they have confirmed that report is accurate. Now, finally, with the DS850, which are the high-speed tabulator units, 3 of these units will be tested for the November 8th election. 5,592 pre-marked test ballots will be run through each DS850. We asked the printer to pre-fold the ballots for us so that we can simulate real-world tabulation of mail ballots, so it does take more time. To get those pre-folded, we have to have staff flatten those 5,592 ballots flat so that they can be run through, but we feel that that adequately simulates what we would see on election day. A results report will be generated and compared to the test report for accuracy. Again, if there is any discrepancy, it's identified and the ballots will be rerun again. The results are uploaded into the election management system, and that unit is reset to 0, and the report will be printed for verification. Once testing on all of the DS200 and DS850 units is complete, a summary report is generated from the election management system and reviewed for accuracy. The EMS is reset to 0, and a report is generated as verification. The results are then submitted to the board at a meeting for the approval of the logic and accuracy testing. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to
Thank
answer
you,
them.
Mr. Nunes.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Schultz?
I have one question. Miguel, when you say it's uploaded to the election management system, who has access to that EMS?
That would be the board and the board staff and election systems and software.
Okay, so it's within this house then,
It
basically.
is, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. West, you had a
yeah.
question?
After all this testing is done, verifications of the machines, is there some form or something that states that this machine, such and such, has completed, has passed all testing? I understand the report is going to be generated, but to say that this particular machine, when someone is, whoever's doing the testing, after they've completed it, no problem, they can verify that machine, whatever the number is on it, has passed this particular testing phase?
Yes, so what happens is for the express vote itself, the original tester will initial the checklist. The second staff member who has to go around and gather the cards in order to bring them back has to.
No, what I want to know is this, once everything has been completed, all tests have been done on each machine. So someone has written down and said, I verify this machine has passed such and such a test. Is there a sheet or form or something that says that each machine has passed the test, a written form with verification?
You mean as a summary?
No,
Of
what I
all of
want
them?
is, you're working on a machine, you're testing a machine, you've run through all the ballots, everything has proved 100%. You verify this machine has accepted whatever you've done, all the testing you've done. It has passed this test. Is there a form that says that this particular machine has passed all tests and it's been verified by whoever the tester is or whatever?
Yeah, so for the DS200, we have the checklist first. That is initialed by the staff person. And then we have another staff person who goes around and verifies, again, this is the second person, the totals on the report, on the tape, we call it. And to verify it does match, and it's been set to zero. And that person will actually sign the tape that comes out of the
You'll be
DS200.
signed on a tape.
They
What I
sign
was
the tape.
looking for was a form that somebody can look at and say, this particular machine, 100%, on such and such a date by such and such a person, for this election, it's passed, it's complete.
Well, we attach the tape to the form, to the checklist, so they stay together, and we actually have our staff go through them all after the LNA testing to verify that they were all reset to zero.
So if somebody comes up, they can look at it and say, okay, this machine has passed, I'm still going to keep driving with this, but this particular machine has passed the test and is 100% ready for voting day.
Yes, if you asked me if a particular machine has paperwork for it after the election, I could go find it and bring to you the checklist and the signed tape indicating it was reset to zero, and they signed off on the results from it, the test results.
So the reason why I'm doing this now is because I know eventually it's going to come back and somebody's going to say, was this machine done this such and such a way?
I
want to know that
understand.
we have the proper information for that.
Understood.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Mr.
It may
DeSimone?
not so much a question, but Miguel, I know there are some issues with voters not looking at their ballot. And I know that's a common issue that we have. And I think some of the issues with any ballot can be resolved that way. So if possible, is it possible for either, your staff to either create signage that can be, prominently displayed over these machines in the areas of these machines? Because I voted on the express vote at my polling place, and there was nothing like this, at least at my polling place. So can we have like the local boards create it? Can we create it and bring it to the local boards, but something specifically designed to tell them that when the ballot comes out of the express vote machine, they should check it? I mean, they should be checking their ballot anyway, but just to add something sort of to the mix, because I know a lot of voters don't look at them.
So we're already a bit ahead of you. For the primary, we sent a notice to the local boards. We didn't have, obviously, the machines had left the building. except for Providence. So we had sent them a sign to affix to each express vote indicating they should verify the selections on their ballot. It was provided in English and Spanish. We have them, since we have the machines now, we're going to affix those to the machines ourselves, and we've tweaked it a little bit to put an arrow on there, make the wording a little bit easier to read. So
Okay.
that will be on every express vote unit.
Very
And then-
good.
I'm sorry, and then
Sorry, go
the only, the only other thing is, when they're using them for the early voting, I think we need to let the local boards know that the machine itself, because there's, I know that you can be seated, you can stand, but the machine itself needs to be sort of put in an area where there's a guarantee of privacy. Because I know the machine that I voted on was, I mean, there were people literally standing like right here when I voted. So as far as I'm concerned, I really don't care about that personally, but I know that could be an issue for privacy. And it really needs to be something that they understand, the local boards, that those items pop up on the screen so they are clearly visible if someone's standing behind you. That's the only other issue. And I know that's not a testing issue, but that's something you may want to mention to the local board.
I agree with you 100%, and we do send guidelines to the local boards, not only for early voting, but also for the polling places, that they have to turn this to the side to ensure privacy and their various specifications. But I agree, it's something that we need to keep in mind to remind them of that.
Anyone
you,
else
Madam
have
Chair.
any questions of Mr. Nunes? Yes, Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you. Miguel, thank you. Just so I just want to understand that the two major changes seem to be with our respective offices is the secretary's office can now see what the screen on the express vote would look like and are able to proof it as if it were a ballot. And then when we put it on the hardware, can all now we are going to test vote ballots. So actually be able to look at the screens. Are those the two major differences in the protocol versus what's in the statute currently?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just
Yes.
one thing off what Commissioner Johnson just said, and I do understand that there's being a ballot run in, and I think, and I know we're up against a time constraint, but I think going forward, that what we need to think about is a greater number of ballots being put through to test. So, maybe setting up something and maybe even putting it as part of a reg that we test a greater number of ballots than we're testing. 'Cause running more than one ballot through or more than two ballots through. So just from my perspective, I
Yeah,
think that's
it's
something we may need
something to
look at.
consider, absolutely.
But I mean, I think what you guys have done is great. It's great to have done this with, another agency and a vendor in this shorter span of time. So, and I'm glad we were able to do something like this before the election. So I commend you and your staff for that.
Right, I agree. And
Thank
I
you.
was just thinking that I know that the board staff and the secretary's staff and working with our vendor has been working on this for many, many hours. So we appreciate the work that you've put in to make this right. And this is the result. Am I correct? This
It is.
protocol is the result of a lot of hours of work that y'all put in.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And if I may, Madam Chairman,
Yes,
I
Mr.
think
Gates.
it's impressive to see how many machines are involved in this testing process.
true.
Those pictures that you put on the screen are really dramatic. I've been around for a while, but that picture really those pictures bring home how many machines are involved in getting the process going for the election. So more power to you in that process.
Yes, it is a tremendous effort in a short window of time, but it's something that we are accustomed to doing, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just have one more.
Yes.
And I know we talked about this, I can't remember. So now this protocol will be in place. Is it time limited? I mean, are we going to have to revisit the statute? Because this is different than what is currently in the statute now, right?
Would like the express vote, like the auto mark, was never in a state statute. But it should be put into statute, and this is something we should work on to have introduced in the next session. And we also should work, if we're not successful, we need to work on creating a rule and reg on what we are going to do. And along the lines of Board Member DeSimone, The staff agrees with his direction that there needs to be more ballots put through, and how we do this needs to be discussed further in 2023.
Yeah, okay, I agree.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
And if I may, I think
Yes.
this dramatizes the need to really look at the timing of the primary and the general election and how much time there really is to accomplish all of this between getting the machines back from the primary and getting them ready for the general election, and in a time that meets the requirements of the federal government for foreign ballots and military ballots.
We concur.
Conversation for another day, I guess.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes,
Mr. Scholes?
well, the protocol is really going into great detail. We're dealing with a very small staff here. So can you give us a sort of a handle of how many people are actually participating from the staff, the Board of Elections, and the Secretary of State's office in these testing protocols for these machines?
Well, right now, we're probably going to rotate through the warehouse up to 20 people involved in the process at any given moment. So whether that's testing on the first test or the second test, whether it's the DS200 or the Express Vote, there'll be a range of 20 people that'll be shifted around the building and to be involved in testing at some point.
Right, thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I know we do have correspondence from Mr. Marion, and I know that you've all reviewed that as well. I'm sure that you've taken the concerns that were noted in his correspondence into account as you were doing your protocol. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, Mr. Marion?
Thank you. I know you're under a tight deadline with this, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it. On the first slide, it referred to an online portal. And I just want to make sure that, so there was a bill that passed the Assembly this year that would have allowed, if the Secretary of State approved of the use of the system, to use the Democracy Live on the ballot online portal for the delivery and return of ballots. And I just want to make sure that's not happening, that term wasn't referring to the use of that system, because I'm not aware that the
My
Secretary-
understanding is that it wasn't, but
Yeah, we'd like to hear
I'm
from
sure.
Bob.
No, Miguel can.
Miguel, can you
So
respond?
I know the Secretary of State has been working on that portal. However, as far as I know, it's not going to be ready for the general election. However, these voters, whether they're military or overseas, or now, as the board ruled earlier in this year, voters who need accessibility to the ballot can go onto the voter information center, onto the online voter registration portal, and can access a PDF version of their ballot. So if a soldier is overseas, or if it's a person with a disability who's in the state, they have access to their ballot through their own unique individual, well, I deem portal, just to make it easier to understand, but the voter information center, and they can actually print or save to their computer their PDF ballot after marking it on screen with their assisted reader, and they can actually email that back to us as military and overseas can currently email it to us as well.
Okay, so thank you for the clarification. The second point is, in 2016, there was an issue with logic and accuracy testing because my understanding of the problem was in one jurisdiction in North Kingstown, the file was saved for logic and accuracy testing, and a second file was saved that was sent to the printer. And maybe not for this week, but if it's not clear in the protocols that the secretary is certifying that the file that office is delivering to you is the same file they're sending to the printer, I think that would just sort of be a nice way to have in writing certification that problem couldn't occur again. Like, my understanding was they fixed that problem after 2016, but I don't think it was ever fixed in writing. And this seems like the place that it should be fixed in writing, if that
But I
makes
believe
sense.
the certification we are going to receive from the Secretary of State's office corrects that problem.
Okay.
Because they're certifying the ballots and the files.
Okay, great. So, yeah, as long as that certification is clear that the file isn't just the file that was used to produce the ballot for the logic and accuracy, it was the same file that was used to produce the ballots that'll be used by voters.
And also the same file that allows the ballot to be read in the equipment.
Okay, perfect. And then to Commissioner DeSimone's point, or Board Member DeSimone's point, about voters who use ballot marking devices like the Express Vote, tons of research showing that very few take the time after it prints out. And the best practice is both to have the sign, to have a verbal prompt if possible. So if you can have a poll worker say to the person, don't forget to review it. And what some jurisdictions have done is they've placed a privacy booth between the Express Vote and the tabulator and marked it as a verification station. And then the voter is encouraged to kind of go there, pause, read their ballot, and then move. Now, again, I know we're in October and we're talking November, but maybe something to explore with URI votes in terms of polling place layout as the technology matures in Rhode Island. It seems like a low-cost way to sort of encourage voters to verify, because, I think those eyes are a second set of checks there. So, and then I guess my last point is just, I hope you publish this on your website someplace. I know like rules and regs have a place and most documents have a place, but I think the public should get to see this document.
I agree.
We will do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marion. Appreciate your input.
To the chair.
Yes, Mr. West?
And the last point there, I think that's something with our PR people that we have, that we could send that out periodically up from now until the election. This is something that they should do to make sure they use, to verify their vote using the
Definitely.
particular machine. So
We can do
Thank
that.
Good suggestion.
We can do that.
I note that we have Mr. Martesian here from the Secretary's office. Would you like to say something, Mr. Martesian?
Just briefly, thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. I'm Jason Martesian from Secretary of State Corbea's office. Just like to reiterate what Miguel had mentioned and Bob, and just like to thank the board staff, board members, and Bob and Miguel and ES&S as well, a lot of thank yous, for working together. This is, as several folks have mentioned, a tight turnaround time, which, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, is a story for another day. But this process does start, just so the board knows, several weeks before this, we're even at this point in time, because our staff is putting together the ballots after you make your final decisions on any recounts and all the other work that you do. So our team, and I just like to thank our team as well for putting together several weekends and the last 2 or 3 weeks. And as Miguel mentioned, this past weekend for looking at and reviewing and proofing the virtual environment or the screens for the express votes to make sure there are no errors in that information as well. And just as an update, we should be, I think they're finalizing, I think our team is coming over shortly just to finalize a couple last minute details for the screens, and we should be, assuming the board approves the protocol, sending that certification for the information as listed in this protocol shortly to the board. So that will check off that part of the process. But again, just like to thank everybody, as there was a lot of work in a tight time frame. But I think there was a result that, while might be improved upon in later times, I think serves the voters well for the upcoming November election.
Very good. Thank you so much. I agree. And it certainly has taken an effort, a cooperative effort, to say the least. So thank you. Okay, I think if we have no further discussion, are we ready to vote on the protocol?
I move that we adopt the protocol as presented.
Second.
Mr. DeSimone, did you second?
Yes, I did.
Moved and seconded to approve the protocol as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous vote of the board. Thank you. Thank you, Miguel. Item number 3, the board may discuss and vote to modify its current directive regarding the use of mail ballot receptacles in polling locations for the November 8th, 2022 election. Mr. Reposa?
Members of the board, the modified polling place receptacle directive before you for your consideration is a result of the firsthand experience realized by the 39 Board of Canvassers and the Board of Elections the day of the primary and the day after the primary. The modification includes some minor word changes. The majority of the modification lies in the changes from the September directive that you issued, which now this directive allows the local board of canvassers to be responsible for opening the polling place receptacles that are returned to their offices upon the close of the polls on November 8th. Upon receipt, they will open the receptacles from each of their precincts and will record the number of ballots contained within each receptacle onto a manifest that has been created by the staff of the Board of Elections. All the ballots collected from their communities will then be deposited into one receptacle along with the completed manifest. The next morning by 12 p.m. on November 9th, the local Board of Canvassers will bring that one receptacle to the Board of Elections here at 2000 Plainfield Pike. The Board of Elections staff will receive the receptacle from each city and town that contains the mail ballots that have been deposited in them. We will open them. We will count the number of ballots contained and compare it to the manifest that has been completed by each city and town. This is a much safer and efficient method compared to the directive which was in place for September 13th, statewide primary, in which the Board of Elections received 366 receptacles. Now we will receive 39 if you approve this change, that were delivered to the Board of Elections by the 39 Board of Canvassers. Again, this directive before you is a benefit to all the 39 boards of canvassers and to the staff of the Board of Elections. I hope you approve this modified directive and vote to pass it to be put in place for the upcoming November 8th general election. I have to stress that when we had pickup trucks pulling into the back of our lot loaded with receptacles, it caused a great pause by the staff of the Board of Elections. It will be much more effective and safer to have a vehicle pull up with one box in their trunk.
So Bob, I have a question. It's the responsibility of the local board. So they're doing this as a team effort, right? When they open this receptacle and they put everything in one,
They
right?
will
These
open the
receptacles.
receptacles, let's say in Stoughton, Barrington, you have 6 polls or 101. 2 of the Board of Canvassers will open the receptacle, take out the ballots if there are any. They will mark it on the manifest that will be created by the Board of Elections. Then they will go on to the next receptacle and do the same, put all the ballots that they find into one with the signed manifest, seal it, and bring it here by 12 p.m. the following day.
So they sign off as well.
They will sign off, and then when we receive it, we will sign off that we received this from them.
Any questions of Bob?
I have a comment.
Mr. West?
Sorry.
Mr. Reposa. And I was thinking about this and at the polling place, could there be a sign, another sign, that this receptacle is only for enclosed or mail ballots enclosed in envelopes, sealed envelopes only?
I believe there was that type of signage on each of those receptacles for the primary, because there was notification if a voter were to put that their ballot into that receptacle, it was considered a void.
And we did void 13 ballots.
And we voided 13.
So
And we
13
did-
13 people were disenfranchised by
Right.
these boxes.
And they didn't read it, apparently.
That is part of the directive. I know that we put that
Yeah.
in, that there
I
has to be
understand.
signage to that effect.
I thought so.
But the signage was in effect, correct,
It
Bob?
was.
Do we know, but how do we verify that? Sorry, like you said, you believe it, but how do we,
It's on the box when it leaves here.
is on the, okay.
Did you have another question, Mr. West?
Yes, did they have someone at the boxes or near the boxes watching it? Or were they just there and then the public just basically?
As we are not there, and that ideally, we will tell the moderators that they should be within the box to keep their eye on the box, because they are in charge of the polling places.
Right.
There are times where other events will pull the moderator away from the box. But in our polls, hopefully that you have more than one poll worker, and I hope that they are looking, keeping an eye on the entire room that they're working in throughout the day.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Scholes, you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, Bob, this is a vast improvement over the previous protocol. I've had the opportunity to speak to a few members of various boards of canvassers, and they were a bit frustrated by the previous protocol because they were trying to arrange for transportation for those boxes, and some of them were about upset that they had to use their own cars, and they couldn't fill all the boxes into their automobile. So I think this is great. I just have one question. At each polling station, precinct, I guess the moderator or warden will open up the box, take out the mail ballots and prepare the manifest. How do they get those mail ballots now to the local board of canvassers? Do they
No.
drive it there, or what do they do?
Well, first, let me back up a second. And you were talking about the primary, you spoke to a few board of canvassers. The Board of Elections totally shares the frustration from the local board of canvassers when we have 16 people back in the warehouse going through these 366 boxes to check and double check to make sure there are no ballots in them. But this protocol requires that the moderator, a warden, and a clerk bring these receptacles back to City Hall. They do not open the boxes. They don't have the capability to open the boxes. The only people that can open these boxes are the Board of Canvassers in each of the 39 communities. And then they bring the voted ballots to us in one of their locked boxes.
So the person who prepares the manifest is a member of either the clerk staff or board of canvassers at that city hall.
That is correct.
Very good. Any other questions?
I have a couple of comments, but not
Sure.
questions.
Let's hear them.
I mean, I can't support the regulation as it sits. I think it's much ado about very little. We are now creating a situation where mail ballots are being handled for another time besides by the voter. Those mail ballots are now being transported to the local board. The local board is handling them, putting them in yet another receptacle of some type or envelope, and then bringing them to us. And I think it's an abrogation of our responsibility to handle those mail ballots and be sure those mail ballots are secure. And I think we're just changing our responsibility and shipping it over to a local board. I don't agree with it. I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with the other directive, so I'll be voting against this one. But that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add or say?
I just want to point out that there are some people who show up at the voting stations with a completed mail ballot, and there's no place to put it. So
And
these
there-
receptacles are there for that very purpose.
Yes, Dick, and there were 13 people who voted in those mail ballots and their vote didn't count.
Well,
And just out of a convenience to a very, very small minority of voters that go to the polling place with a mail ballot. They have the ability to mail the ballot, they have the ability to put them in our drop boxes, and they have the ability to deliver them here in a drop box. And now we've given them an additional ability to put them at a polling place. I would be much more in favor of adding additional drop boxes, say to high schools across the city, because it seems to be this certain areas of the state where this is a problem. And I'd suggest that we're basically trying to, kill a fly with a 4x8 piece of plywood. And I just think it could be solved in a lot of other ways other than to put these boxes in the polling places and put them all over the state. So that's the concern I have. And I have a concern, I had the concern at the beginning, that people were going to lose their vote and be disenfranchised because of a convenience issue. And that's all it is a convenience issue. So, I appreciate everybody's opinion on it, but I, for one, will be voting against it.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Mr. Scholes. Go ahead.
is
Mr.
it not
Pierce.
true that a person could bring their mail ballot to the polling place, surrender it, and be issued a provisional ballot to vote in a regular way? Is that not true?
That law was changed in the state, I believe, where before it used to be that they could surrender it at the Board of Canvassers.
Oh, okay. But they can't do it at the polling place.
Now, if they go to the polling place, they would be required to do a provisional ballot.
That's what I mean, but they could do
They
that.
could do a provisional ballot at the
Yeah.
polling place,
Right.
which would then ultimately be counted at, within a few days here at the board.
So there would be an option available as a person by mistake. I didn't mail it soon enough, I want to make sure it counts, and they get themselves to their polling place, that they could surrender their mail ballot and receive a
They could-
provisional
They
ballot.
could do a provisional ballot.
Yes, okay.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Johnson?
Yeah, just one comment in looking ahead, and I am pro receptacle. And so but I share Commissioner DeSimone's extreme frustration on, one vote not being counted is too many as far as I'm concerned. So I would encourage us to tighten as much as humanly possible to make sure that, that doesn't happen again. I also feel very strongly that moving forward, we should have a discussion about increasing the number of drop boxes. I know in a city like Providence, to have it at City Hall, to have one at City Hall is not, equitable compared to other communities. And I'm sure, so maybe we do an audit of some sort. I think the high schools are an excellent idea. They already have security cameras, but I think moving forward, we cannot have one at each city and town. And, although I agree with the idea of receptacles, I think there are some things that, we will need to change moving forward.
No, I would.
I agree.
Yeah, and I
would agree
respect,
as well. And
we've talked,
look, I
I
respect the rest of the
completely
boards.
respect it.
I respect everybody's opinion on this, but I dealt with mail ballots for a long, long time. I just think mail ballots are our responsibility, this board's responsibility, and I think the more people that handle them, the worse it is. But again,
This is
just from my-
specifically for the upcoming election. We can certainly have conversation after this. Is there something in here saying the percentage that has to be, is that still in here?
Yeah, that was in the original directive where 5% of the outstanding mail ballots had to be received, and that was, the number was 142. We actually received 145. So that's where we were over the 5%, but this.
It's not 5%.
It was 5% of the outstanding mail
Oh, of the
ballots that
outstanding.
were not received. So that was over the 5%, but this directive was only for the 2022 election.
Understood.
we
And
can
actually, Madam
forward-
Chair, it does refer to November 8 by way of the measurement. That metric is going to be the November 8 general election.
Right.
It will be.
So certainly we can have discussion
This is a
after this.
one-time shot.
It is.
Yes, it's specifically for this election.
So for 2024, when we have our next statewide, we can address additional drop boxes with the cameras located within the state.
And let's see how many people use this method to deposit their ballots.
I agree.
Okay. Any other conversation, discussion, comments? Hearing none? Do we have a vote?
I move to adopt the directive as presented.
Do we have a second? Second. Seconded by Mrs. Johnson, moved by Mr. Scholes. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
So we have approval and 1 dissension. Okay? Any other business before the board? I don't believe there is. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. DeSimone. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Schultz. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 2:50 PM. I know. Much quicker than I thought it was going to be.